Andrews and Kevin's kind enough to take a few minutes with us this morning. Hi, Kevin. How are you?
Good morning, guys. Good to be with you again.
How'd the Seahawks get the top crew this week? How did we land you guys?
It's a fun game, no? I mean, I think it's a really fun game. I think two teams I think we kind of know what they are, but we're not 100% sure. But there's a lot of stars in this game, so I'm excited, guys. When I started at Fox, I was in Seattle all the time, and I miss it. I haven't done a game there in a really long time, so I can't wait to come back.
When you think of stars, are you thinking more Bills Seahawks or more World Series that you'll be on the stage of tonight as well?
Yeah, the World Series, that's a lot of stars, Brock. I mean, I got stars sitting next to me on the desk, obviously, and then there's 5 MVPs playing in the game. I mean, that's never been done, so that's a lot of stars too. So I guess I get a star-studded weekend, which I'm not complaining about.
We were trying to figure out just quickly on the World Series, how many would you say it's 4 of the game's top 10 position players are playing in this game?
I think that's totally fair. Yeah, I mean, the 2 best players in the sport are playing the game. I think you leave it at that, right? I mean, I think the thing about baseball is that, I guess, okay, like you look at football, Mahomes is in the Super Bowl and in the championship game. You look at the NBA, you've seen Steph and LeBron and all those guys in the championship game. The stars in baseball don't always get there. And, I look at a guy like Mike Trout, right, who's been hurt the last couple of years. He was the best player in the sport for years, and he never won a playoff game. So I think until you really show the rest of the country, that percentage of the country that doesn't watch until the World Series, like what you're about, that's when I think it kind of takes off. That's why I think it's so special for the game to have Ohtani and Judge and the Dodgers and Yankees. I just think it's such a cool moment to have the 2 best players squaring off in the series. So I think it's going to be really, really cool.
And kind of in a similar vein, I think you could argue and say maybe in the NFL over the last 5-6 years, one of their great stars has not made the Super Bowl because Mahomes, unfortunately, has been a little bit of kryptonite for Josh Allen. But Josh Allen's skill set, Josh Allen's upside, Josh Allen's playmaking, all of those things are just at a level that very few in the league can do. So you've watched the games. You're going to talk to their coaches here in about 25 minutes or so. What do you see in this version of Josh Allen the Seahawks are going to see on Sunday?
He's better. It's interesting. Like, they lost all these vets in the offseason, and, they're like, oh, man, Buffalo's rebuilding, and what are they going to do? And, yeah, they lost some great talent. They lost some real leaders on the team. But he hasn't thrown an interception yet. I don't know if people around the country realize that. And, when you think of Allen, I almost said Favre, because you think of a gunslinger, right? He just gives you he doesn't care, right? He's going to run 3. He's going to throw it 75 yards and let his guy make a play. So he's doing that, but he still has not thrown an interception because they've changed it a little bit. They're doing a lot of quick game on the first couple downs and, getting the ball out of his hands and then letting third down kind of let him take over and be Superman if he has to. He was kind of being Superman on every down, so they're trying to take that and make it a little less on him. And I think he's really thrived. Look, I like the addition of Cooper to make him better, but I love watching Josh Allen, and we never get them as a Fox crew. We had him once last year, but he's got this crazy stat, Brock, throws within a yard of the sideline. He's got more completions and yards from throws within a yard of the sideline than anyone, than the rest of the league combined over the last couple of years. So it's like plays are never dead is the point. So he's fun, man. He really is.
Plays are never dead, and just the arm strength, right, and the ability to do it on the run. And, we watched the Seahawks struggle to tackle Daniel Jones a couple of weeks ago. It makes me a little concerned for how they're going to tackle Josh Allen in space. Is he still running this year, too?
Not as many design runs for him. He is running, and that's always going to be a part of his game because he's a big dude. But they're not really doing the design runs. And I think, look, it's funny. I think they're trying to kind of reel him in a little bit. You don't want to take away that kind of wild, that wild horse in him, if you will, But I think you're trying to keep him safe, right? On downs, you don't have to get him hit. Don't get him hit. And if you can make him slide, I know it's hard for him. That's not in his DNA at all. But things like that. So, yes, running is still a part of his game, and it always will be. But it's not as much. I don't see as much as the design stuff that they had been doing in years past.
What have you seen 7 games in from the other gunslinger in this game, who also has got a new coordinator and a new regime asking Geno to do some different things? What do Kevin Burkhardt's eyes see watching the tape?
Well, Brock, I am obviously the amateur eyes there compared to you, but I tell you what, I guess there's a couple things. First of all, I mean, I go back to what Greg Olson told me about Geno Smith, when I was working with Greg. And, Greg obviously was in Seattle the one year and, was hurt for a lot of it. But he loved Geno. And he's like, Geno can spin the ball unlike anyone I've ever been around. And he is spinning it, man. I mean, he is throwing darts back there. I think he's playing great. I'm just a little surprised at how often they're throwing it, and it's working for them, and they're getting chunks of yards with their playmakers, especially VK. I guess when I watch Seattle, I don't, they're in shotgun all the time, and Geno's throwing it all over the yard, and when he's protected, he throws it as good as anybody. I guess I just look at Kenneth Walker, and I keep expecting him to be Derrick Henry because he's so electric, and he's got such insane ability, but they're really not feeding him because their offensive line is not super great run blockers. I'm kind of waiting for that to develop from Seattle's offense. But, I mean, look, I think Geno, he's played great. I think they need a little bit more from the other side of the ball in the run game, in my opinion.
Kevin Burkhardt with us here. You've now had the chance to work with Brady for not quite half a season. What have you learned being around the greatest player the game has ever seen?
Well, I mean, not surprising, but he works his butt off and, prepares like you would think, right? A guy of that ilk who was great at everything he ever did. And I think, to me, it's just so cool to pick his brain on why certain things work. Like, okay, we're doing the Chiefs 49ers last week, right? And it was so interesting because the Chiefs and Mahomes are kind of in a similar place where he was at points of his career where, if you remember the Patriots, they had those years where they had Moss and, they had it all locked and loaded with Welker and Amendola and Edelman, but they had years where they didn't have a lot of great receivers and, they kind of made it work on offense and, maybe more of the running game. And that's kind of where the Chiefs are now. So it was just so cool to hear how, him talking about Patrick and just learning, like, finding ways to win. He's like, you're going to have years where you have 50 touchdowns and maybe you have years where you have 22, but if you're winning, it doesn't matter. And just kind of like, I guess, playing the hand that you're dealt, essentially, which is something you would never think you'd hear from the greatest player of all time. Mm-hmm. It's just like the smart things that come out of his mouth that are just like, wow, that's interesting. I would have never known that. So to me, that's been the fun part, just being a football nerd and being around him and absorbing some of his stories. It's been a blast.
It's interesting you bring that up, and it's kind of comes back to a debate and a conversation we were having earlier this week about building teams in the NFL and whether it is about what it seems like the Ravens or the Lions have done, where they say, hey, here is our identity. We are going to draft to that identity all the time and be really steadfast in it, and that's how we're going to build this thing the way we want it to be, versus some other teams, and maybe this was a Belichick thing, where you say, hey, it's almost random and difficult to get good players at all. So when you get them, you just build around them and try to change your style to the players you have. Do you have I don't know. It's not really a question in there so much as an observation, but have you noticed any of that or had any of those conversations before, have an opinion on it?
I think certain teams, I think, look, it's easy to say, like, the word identity when you're talking about Detroit or Baltimore because they run through your face. Like, that's their identity, right? Mm-hmm. I think San Francisco's in the same vein, right? I think that's what they want to do. Like, that's who they are. They make no bones about it. They're going to run through your face. They're going to be physical, and you're going to be worn out after you play them. That's kind of how they do it, and that's their identity. But I think it's just, Belichick always wanted the smart player and, to learn everything about his system and to pick it up and to play together as a unit. So, I think, you can notice that. And I think, that's why it's going to be so interesting with Mike in Seattle, because I think, obviously, he knows where he wants to go. He and John know what they want to do, but you could see it, like, especially defensively, they're trying to work their way there, and they need a few more pieces to get to be as exotic as he was at Michigan or in Baltimore. They're not there yet, so they're kind of building towards that and changing it up a little bit. So I'm always fascinated by how each team does it. And I think Detroit is the most fascinating because they didn't have an identity for a long time. Their identity was Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson, and to come in and start from basically zero and build what they've built with Dan Campbell, and it's been ultra impressive.
What do you think we can learn from the Seahawks this weekend?
I think we could find out who they are, because I thought last week, Brock, was the first game, because like looking at their games this year, and you guys know you've watched every one of them. Okay, wins are great, so you take any win you can get, but none of them were like, okay, they beat Miami, they beat Denver at the time, Nick's first game, and they lose to the Giants at home. Made no sense to me. I thought last week was a really good win. I think Atlanta's pretty good. They have 3 straight turnovers in series on the defense, 3 in a row, and I thought they flew around with the ball. And you're playing with backup quarterbacks in the game, backup safeties in the game. I thought that was really, really impressive from their side of the ball. And I thought it was a really good win on the road. So now it's okay. Can you beat a really good team? And I think Buffalo's a really good team. And I think they're still kind of getting in the groove too, but. I expect them to go deep in the playoffs. So I'm just really curious to see how they stack up. To me, last week was the first week where I was like, all right, now I kind of have a feel for Seattle, right? They didn't play through well against San Francisco, and a lot of teams don't. But I'm just really curious, Brock, to see how they stack up. I think Buffalo, they're top 10 in the league in scoring and in scoring defense. Obviously, they've got Josh. They've got, even though they lost a bunch of those playmakers, they still got guys that make plenty of plays. So I think it's an ultimate test for them to see where they are. Because let's face it, this division is wide open, and all they got to do is win the division. I don't think it really matters where they stand in the NFC, because all they have to do is win this wide open division, and they're in the tournament. That's the way I look at it.
You going to pinch yourself again tonight as you're out there for the World? Being out there on the field before the World Series, are those still pinch yourself moments for you?
Oh my God. So yeah, I'm so lucky to do what I do. It is never lost on me, right? I'm sitting next to A-Rod and Big Papi and Jeter, like moments for the first pitch of the World Series.
That's weird.
On the field, and then
that's just hold on. That's just weird, isn't it?
It's don't get me wrong. Like, friends text me all the time. Like, do you ever just look to your left and wonder like where you are?
Right.
Like yeah. Every day. It makes no sense, right? And then I get to fly up to Seattle and do a great NFL game on Sunday. So it's just, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm so lucky, but I love it. You guys know that. I've talked to you enough, so it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be a really cool weekend.
Last question quickly here. Most important question. I can't believe I buried the lead for 14 minutes.
Yeah, Brock.
It's going to be mid-50s, some rain, a little chill in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the first time we pull it out? Is this the first time we go with a little sweater, zip sweater?
Quarter zip?
Quarter zip?
Brock, you're unbelievable. You know that? Well, I will tell you this. Listen, I will pack it. I will pack it.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to feel it out. Like, I like to let the suit breathe, but if it gets a little chilly, if I feel like the zip up has to come out, it's got to come out. You understand.
You're a guy who can pull off a good pale purple, like a lavender.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I like a good lavender. I think I like a good manly lavender once in a while. So you got to be not afraid in these situations. You just got to throw it out there.
The world
might not all work, but you throw it out there.
The world's split into those of us who can pull off lavender and those of us who can't. And you're on the good side of that, which is why we love you so much, Kevin. Thank you so much. As always, enjoy tonight. Enjoy being here tomorrow, and we'll look forward to listening.
All right, love you guys. Talk soon. Be well.
There you go. There's Kevin Burkhardt.